Hey everybody, it's Monday, September 23rd, 2024. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Show. We're going to just unplug the season and plug it back in again. It's me, your man, MG Marcus Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and Laquan Jones. All right, man, I'm going to give you the space. You're rocking the colors today. Your team came from behind and beat my team. They absolutely earned the win. My team deserved every little bit of that loss. The 49ers gagging one up. So there, talk your talk, man, because the Rams earned it yesterday.
I know I said we did a truce, but in my best Dave Chappelle voice, psych, no way. Rams for the W, baby, at the crib. And I'm so mad I didn't go to that game to see those moments, man. But I'm going to let you live, MG. I'm going to let you live.
Well, based on the videos, you'd have been the only one wearing blue and yellow there, apparently.
Hey,
it was.
What I say in the chat? 49ers jerseys are just cheaper.
Yeah,
that's why.
Sure. It was truly Levi's out there. But yeah.
The Rams' last 14-point win, come from behind win, was against Washington when Shanahan and McVay were both on that staff.
Wow.
Crazy.
Look at
so
that.
A little bit of heat there. Look at that. Time is a flat circle, the whole deal. All right, we got a lot to get into on the show. We'll have our biggest takeaways from week 3, plus some guys that we're breaking up with. It's been 3 weeks, and the trends are trending. We'll figure out guys that we might have to say goodbye to. Plus, we'll give you some waiver wire love as well. But as we always do about this time, let's start with some fantasy headlines and a couple of big ones. I mean, there have been injuries all throughout the NFL. But on Sunday, we saw Devonta Smith leave the Eagles win over New Orleans with a concussion, took a really big hit in that game. Dallas Goedert had a huge day. But we'll see what the status is going to be for Smith going into this week. We know A.J. Brown's still dealing with an issue. Like, he may not play next week. We will see about that as well. So, I mean, Florida, if we go into this and there's no A.J. Brown and there's no Devonta Smith, what are we doing with Jalen Hurts? Because even with those guys, it hasn't looked great for Hurts this season.
No, the first 2 games haven't looked great, but at least we got, solid fantasy production out of him. My hope is that maybe A.J. Brown could come back for this, but even if he doesn't, you'd have to have another really good option, I think, to get away from Jalen Hurts. Quarterback is a little bit thinner than we had maybe hoped it would be coming into the season. Guys like Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins just aren't really usable right now in fantasy. So it would depend on your other option, but because of what he can give with his legs still, because he still has Dallas Goedert, Saquon there, I still think he would probably be a QB1 and start. I have him in the league. I would be starting him. My bench quarterbacks aren't anything to write home about, but it very much so it depends on your options type of scenario.
I mean, right now he is the QB6. We still have 2 Monday night games left to be played. 2 of the 3, Laquan, have just been kind of He had 16, just under 16 and a half in week 1, under 11 points in week 2. In week 3, I should say. Had the good week 2 game with 24 fantasy points. But Laquan, we go back to late last year where the Eagles offense sort of struggled. What do we make of Jalen Hurts? I mean, is this who he is? Is it going to be kind of rocky from week to week, or can we expect better?
It's going to be rocky as long as this Eagles offense has injuries. A.J. Brown is a huge piece to that offense. So not having him and then possibly having a concussed Devonta Smith, possibly missing a game next week against the Bucs, it's going to be hard for Jalen Hurts to be the Jalen Hurts that we know and love, be able to get out of that pocket, roll out, and extend the plays with his legs, of course. But it's more so we're seeing Jalen Hurts struggle going out of the pocket, extending the plays, and a lot of these interceptions are just unacceptable. So when you're taking away core pieces from this Philadelphia Eagles offense, I start to look at Jalen Hurts as a fantasy asset to where it's like, I might have to bench you, dude. I might have to bench you when your team is fully healthy. Just having Saquon Barkley, unless he's catching 20 balls, doesn't really help Jalen Hurts.
Well, I think, Flora, you tweeted earlier in the season that Jalen Hurts looks slower than we have seen in the past.
He then ran 40 yards shortly after that.
So congratulations on being a motivator. That's what you did. You just motivated him right there. Speaking of quarterbacks and their feet, Justin Herbert started the game for the Chargers against Pittsburgh on Sunday. Did not finish the game. He left the stadium in a walking boot. Laquan, look, the passing game in Los Angeles, I almost said San Diego. The passing game for the Chargers has not been great. We sort of expected that, I guess, with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh at the controls. But now, if there's no Justin Herbert, can we start any Chargers? And I even include J.K. Dobbins in that, because if there's no Justin Herbert, if I'm a defense, do I just scheme to take away the run game and force the Chargers to beat me through the air?
I think you still start J.K. Dobbins. This resurge isn't by accident. The dude's balling. He's efficient. You could stack the box all you want. He's one of those guys that can get through those tackles. So I'm definitely thinking about the other options, the pass catchers, and I'm not quite sure. Like Quentin Johnson, QJ, he's going out there balling out right now, but 2 of his touchdowns are on blown coverages. So I'm not really sold 100%. And if you take Justin Herbert out of that equation, I'm not too sure what this passing game is going to look like. It's already low volume. It's already a little bit boring through the air. But you're taking out the captain of this offense in Justin Herbert, so I'm not quite sure if I can depend on a Ladd McConkey. I'm not quite sure if I could depend on the Josh Palmer or where he's at, in QJ. So it's looking at, the rest of the pass catchers that I'll probably sit and look for other options and pivot to other positions at the flex position, because none of these guys are your wide receiver 1 or 2. So J.K. Dobbins seems like the safest bet if you're going to be looking at these Chargers players in your starting lineups.
I mean, real quick, Florio, Quentin Johnston, real or mirage?
I think he's real. I was saying he was real last week. I was a believer of his both coming into the NFL draft, and I kept saying all summer not to write him off. But what I think he's real is, one, he is massive, so he's a good run blocker, so that keeps him on the field a whole bunch. Plus, he is their go-to guy in the red zone. So that alone also, look, if Justin Herbert sits next week, yeah, I think you get away from QJ. Even if he plays, you might want to get away from him because the Chiefs secondary is still really tough. And who knows how Herbert will look. But yeah, if I picked up Quentin Johnson in a number of leagues last week, and I'm feeling good about it. There's not many players that'll hit off the waiver wire with a chance to be their team's wide receiver 1 and top target, and he clearly has that opportunity.
So far, the passing game is Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey. They both have 10 catches. Johnston, a few extra yards and a couple more touchdowns, but it's going to be low volume pretty much all year long. All right, let's get ourselves to some fantasy heroes presented by Subway. Let's go with some of the guys who were the top scorers heading into Monday night. Dak Prescott, 379 passing yards, couple of passing touchdowns, also ran for a score, nearly 30 points for him. Saquon Barkley continuing to give John Mara insomnia. 147 rushing yards, a pair of rushing touchdowns, also 4 catches for 9 yards, 33.6 points there. Jawan Jennings, I said he's going to be a sleeper. I didn't think he's going to give you 46.5 points, though. He looked like Jerry Rice and Randy Moss all rolled into one. 11 for $175 and 3 touchdowns. Dallas Goedert had a day, 10 for $170. That was 27 points. Will Lutz, 4 field goals, a couple of PATs. That was good for 14. And the Packers defense, I liked them as a sleeper this week. 8 sacks, 3 takeaways, a touchdown. Will Levis keeping fantasy defenses in business. But let's look at some of our other fantasy heroes. Guys who may not have made this list this week. And for you, Laquan, we're sipping a little Chardonnay, huh?
Yeah, a little Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet, man, is definitely a fantasy hero for me, man, because he is one of the 2 handcuffs that all summer we were saying to go grab, and they're actually performing at a high level. Jordan Mason being the other guy. Look at me giving love to the NFC West wearing the Rams jersey. It happens sometimes, but Zach Charbonnet is running like this should be his backfield, Ken Walker, I think there is no rush for them to get him back, because these bye weeks are going to start coming early, and you want to take players like Ken Walker and kind of let him rehab to fully come back. But Zach Charbonnet, he's got the keys, man. He is running hard. He's running great, and a lot of fantasy managers are happy that they were able to get him in those later rounds basically for free.
No, one of my fantasy lineups says you should rush Ken Walker back. Like, please, Seattle, get him back and healthy, ready to go. Florio, your hero is a guy that you have been, look, you're not the only one, but you have been very big on this guy pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors continues to be my guy. And look, there was so many big names that were playing after the early slate of games yesterday. It was so nice in a couple of spots to be able to just sit back and be like, I don't even got to sweat. Malik Neighbors has me covered. And 2 weeks ago, or last week, I should say, it was like, okay, yeah, he had this monster game, but it came in the best possible matchup a wide receiver could have. This was a big test now going up against the Cleveland Browns, and he came through once again. You see there over 28 fantasy points. Youngest wide receiver in NFL history with a 2-touchdown game. First player in NFL history with over 20 catches and 3 touchdowns in his first 3 career games. I know people coming into the year were like, quarterback play might hurt, quarterback proof. Matchups might hurt, matchup proof. He is one of the elite wide receivers in the league. I am already willing to say he is the best wide receiver that plays in New York right now. There's not a whole lot of wide receivers I'd rather have the rest of the way than Malik Neighbors.
Wow, all respect. I'm not Garrett Wilson. He's pulling the Justin Jefferson. What is it about LSU guys trying to upstage Garrett Wilson? I have no idea. Justin Jefferson, now Malik Neighbors.
What's the beef?
What is the beef, indeed? Sam Darnold, because we all would have predicted that, through nearly the end of week 3, that Sam Darnold was going to be the QB2 overall, just slightly behind Lamar Jackson. But that is where we are. And Kevin O'Connell has this offense humming. This Vikings team looks like they are going to be a problem all year long. Darnold, the 4 passing touchdowns. You see that, the 23.24 fantasy points. And look, he's doing it pretty much with just Justin Jefferson. I mean, he's getting Jalen Naylor involved, but they didn't have Jordan Addison in week 3. They still aren't going to have TJ Hawkinson for a while, but he's making things happen. He's getting Aaron Jones involved in the passing game, which you love to see. So right now, Darnold has become one of those guys that has gone from kind of a punchline to a guy like, hey, maybe we should check him out. Next week, they're on the road at Green Bay. I still think he can be successful there. Now we'll see, because they got the Jets coming up in week 5. But right now, there's no reason that Sam Darnold shouldn't be rostered everywhere. Right now on NFL.com, rostered in just 15% of leagues. Ooh. I suspect that is going to change dramatically by the time we get to Wednesday morning, because Sam Darnold needs to be in lineups as long as the Vikings offense is going this hot. So
we should put KOC in the same convos with like McVay and Shanahan, I think. That's just...
We might have to. I mean, it might start happening as long as they keep winning and keep being successful offensively. Let's get to some of our other big takeaways, though, from week 3. And Laquan, I don't know, Raider fans, earmuffs, man, because it was not a good day for you. But for the folks who decided to keep pounding down there in Charlotte, it seemed pretty good.
I am back in on the Panthers offense, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I can't believe I'm going to be spinning the block to go get a Chuba Hubbard. I can't believe that right now Deontay Johnson's rostered in less than 70% of leagues. Like, Andy Dalton came in, showed up, showed out, and put up 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Red Rifle went in on the Raiders defense. And listen, I'm honestly super excited for Jonathan Brooks to be coming back to a structured, well-productive offense where we can see some type of light out of this run game. I really feel as though Chuba Hubbard, man, he showed up and showed out with his opportunities as well, putting over 100 yards, man. He looked really good this week, and I think, we need to be running to the waiver wire, man, to go get a Chuba Hubbard if our running backs are going to keep getting banged up, because I want a guy that's going to be able to take the opportunity, because this isn't something foreign from Chuba, man. He's been able to have 100-yard games. He has 4 of them in the last 3 seasons, so it's looking like Chuba Hubbard has the keys right now until Jonathan Brooks comes back. But this is a healthy Panthers offense that I think has a lot more in store for us coming next week.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how much of this was Andy Dalton taking over and making that offense look functional. How much of it was the Raiders sort of raidering a little bit? We'll find out. They got the Bengals, the Bears, the Falcons coming up in the next 3 weeks, but it's worth taking a shot on those guys just because of what we saw yesterday. Florio, what was a thing that you learned from week 3?
Yeah, as a Deontay Johnson huge supporter, I loved what I saw yesterday there.
Same.
I also was a huge supporter of Anthony Richardson coming into this year. I'm starting to worry about him a little bit. In his first 3 full NFL games, he was averaging 26 fantasy points per game. In his last 2 full NFL games combined, he does not have 15 fantasy points. And the thing is, turnovers. 6 interceptions on the year, 5 in his last 2 games. And if you watched the game yesterday, and I was locked in very closely on this game, there could have been one, it's the way the turnovers are coming. They are like Will Levis-esque, some of them. But 2, there was a couple of near interceptions that he got away with that could have made this day look even worse. So that has me concerned. They get the Steelers this week. I'm not telling you to drop him or anything like that. In fact, I think you should try to buy low right now. But a little peek behind the curtain for week 4, I have him as a sit against the Steelers.
It's not a good situation. And part of it is that he's not scrambling. Like when he's getting yards, there's a lot of undesigned runs. He's not doing it as much as a scrambler. We talked about Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense. I'm going to tell you about the Vikings defense. And maybe don't start guys against them right now. It has not looked good for anybody going up against Brian Flores' defense. They shut down the Houston Texans yesterday. They had C.J. Stroud just kind of locked up. It was not a great day for a lot of the Texans receivers. The week before that, it was the 49ers, Brock Purdy. Going over afterwards is just like telling Brian Flores your scheme is a nightmare. Like just, in the highest compliment possible. It has been just a disaster for any offense going up against the Minnesota Vikings. So look, you may have some studs that you're just not going to get away from, but after 3 weeks, it is fair to say that this Vikings offense, or defense rather, is going to be a problem for any opposing offenses. And if you've got guys going against Minnesota in any week in fantasy, at best, lower your expectations. If you have any other options, possibly get away from them, because right now, we always find defenses to pick on. We got to find ones to get away from. And right now, that looks very much like the Minnesota Vikings. Still got plenty more to do here on the show. We'll get you some waiver wire, guys. Plus, some folks that, you know what? It's over. That's coming up next on the NFL Fantasy Football Show. Time for Waiver Wire, presented by YouTube TV. Florio, who should we be looking at this week?
Geno Smith in a good matchup this week against the Lions. Aaron Rodgers is starting to look like Aaron Rodgers again. And then we talked a lot about Sam Darnold. Braylon Allen, we told you to pick up last week. Do not make the same mistake of leaving him out there this week. Emmanuel Wilson is getting more and more work there for the Packers. Justice Hill continues to get all passing down duty. And then Roshan Johnson looked good and was playing a whole lot more than anticipated this week. And then some pass catchers. Quentin Johnston, if he was still left on your waiver wire, change that now. Jawan Jennings obviously needs to be added after what he just did. Allen Lazard and Wan'Dale Robinson, some wide receiver twos for the New York teams. Jalen Naylor just scores a touchdown every week, it seems. Demario Douglas, very sneaky next week against the 49ers. And then Tyler Conklin and Cole Kmet are coming off of big games. And look, tight end is such a wasteland right now that you could do a whole lot worse than one of those two.
No doubt about it. Let's talk about Jawan Jennings, though, real quick. Look, Laquan, it was obviously a huge day for him in the losses for the 49ers. 3 touchdowns, we can't count on that every single week. But it feels like, though, as long as Deebo Samuel is banged up and George Kittle is sort of banged up, it looks like Jawan Jennings is going to have a role in this offense.
Absolutely. I mean, the dude's going to eat. 6'3", he's a long body. He catches the ball at the highest point. Like, he's available in the middle of the field a lot of times. Like, you see that he's a deep threat. I mean, none of the DBs, for the Rams were able to keep up with him, man. Like, he was just out there doing anything and everything he wanted to do. And, like, he was showing he could be a deep threat and catch everything underneath short as well. Like, he's going to be a huge add on the waiver wire this week.
It's good to see the Niners extended their wide receiver
one.
They also paid Brandon Ayuk. So, there's that.
Yeah. I thought Ayuk would have this game. I'm not happy.
There are a lot of people who did. I actually thought he would too, to be honest with you. You mentioned, Florio, the tight end position, which is really a problem right now. Cole Kmet, I know the Bears haven't been great offensively, but he does look like he's going to get some opportunities there. Even with the 3, well, we'll see. Does it happen when the 3 wide receivers come back, I guess is the question.
In week 1, the only time we really saw all 3 play, Kmet only had 1 target, so I'm not sure if it'll sustain. But right now, who knows with Keenan Allen? This is a heel issue going back to something he was dealing with last season. So I don't know if we could really bank on Keenan's availability. If he does suit up, then the expectations for Kmet changes. But 11 targets this past week is something you just simply cannot ignore, not at the tight end position. There's very few usable options right now, and even fewer on the waiver wire. So you got to take a chance.
At this point, if you get 7 to 9 points out of your tight end, you got to kind of feel good about that.
That's a win.
Else is kind of a bonus at this point. So speaking of guys that maybe are frustrating for us, get to the segment we're calling "It's Over." It's been 3 weeks. These guys haven't produced. The situations look bleak. So for you, Laquan, who is somebody where it's like, I'm just done now?
I'm so done with Will Levis, man. He makes some bonehead mistakes, man. Just stop playing so reckless. Like, he shows us flashes that he could be a elite quarterback at times where he's able to get out of the pocket, see the vision, and make the deep pass. But then there's mistakes where it's just like, what are you thinking? Like this, what are you doing? Like, I can't say what was really said, but man, this is one of those things we all were in sync watching this mistake. Like, what are you? Well, there you go. What are you doing? But it's like, come on, man. You got to play better. And my fantasy roster cannot wait around for him to be playing reckless ball for the next couple of weeks.
He is great, though, if you're streaming defenses. You can target Will Levis.
There you go.
Point.
Pick on him.
Florio, who are you done with now?
Zamir White. I faded him coming into the year. I have him on one team, and I want him on. Like, I understand if maybe you can't drop him, but there's no way you could start him right now. Through 3 games, he has 32 carries and 6 targets. That's good for just under 11 carries per game and 2 targets per game. He's played under 40% of the snaps in 2 out of the 3 games. And what's even worse is he is getting the most low-value touches you can get. He is used on the ground between the 20s. When they get into passing down situations, they bring in Alexander Mattison. And when they get on the goal line, they're like, you know what? Zamir White, I know you're 6 foot 215, but we're going to call you out. We're going to bring in Alexander Mattison to vulture these touchdowns from you. It is a nightmare. I don't care how many times Antonio Pierce says he wants to get him the ball more. It is not happening. It didn't happen against the Panthers. You cannot trust him.
Yeah, the Panther situation was sort of if it doesn't happen now, when is it going to happen? And it didn't happen. Didn't help that the Raiders got themselves behind by multiple scores and then had to abandon the run game as well. But even when they were still close, it just was looking bad for Zamir White. Similar situation for DeAndre Swift. And you saw Roschon Johnson's name pop up there on that list of waiver options. I thought this was going to be a good week for DeAndre Swift going against the Colts. Their run defense had been awful all year long. Instead, it turned into a very pass-heavy game for Chicago. You saw Caleb Williams go over 360 passing yards, get his first NFL passing touchdown as well. The Bears really didn't try to run it, and when they did, it was not effective. I think no play epitomizes the week more than a 4th down pitch near the goal line where they're trying to stretch Swift out to the edge, and the blocking was atrocious. It looked like a big box store on Black Friday. The guy's just running through the offensive line and getting to DeAndre Swift to take him down. Now you're seeing Roschon Johnson get more opportunities. The Bears still cannot score a ton of points. They can't run it effectively. So DeAndre Swift was the guy that you were getting in the mid-rounds. The upside is that you weren't necessarily pinning a lot of hopes on his production. But what he's doing right now doesn't give you any hope. The Bears offense with Shane Waldron looks like a mess, and it's going to be very easy, I think, in a lot of fantasy leagues to get away from DeAndre Swift. I suspect we're going to see him very heavily on the waiver wire in the weeks to come. Yeah. But here's the thing. It wasn't all bad for running backs across the NFL. In fact, there was a guy in Kansas City who, had a pretty good weekend, had a lot of folks living vicariously through him, in fact, which gets us to Moments We Love by Barefoot Wines.
Carson Steele's sister, Kessler, and her now husband, Jack, just sent us this video from their wedding reception taking place as we speak. Watching Carson make his first ever NFL start. Wasn't great timing. Today was the only day the venue was available. His sister sent out a save the date over a year ago, and Carson was supposed to be a groomsman, but luckily they have the big screen. He's there in spirit.
All right, so, it's a lot of fun. You got the family together. They're watching Carson Steele. Is he kind of upstaging his sister's wedding?
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
Dude, also,
everyone at that wedding is watching a football game on TV. Yes.
Yeah.
The other part of it is, okay, I know apparently the venue was not available very often. They only had a certain number of dates. But he was supposed to be a groomsman. His family really didn't have a lot of faith that he was going to be on an NFL roster, huh?
Yeah, that's kind of nasty work right there. You'll be available. Don't worry about it.
There's nothing on a Sunday in the fall that would keep you busy.
I will say,
to their point, though, he almost wasn't on an NFL roster.
Very true. He was an undrafted free agent. He was an undrafted free agent out of UCLA. He signed with the Chiefs, and I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he actually did end up making the final roster. So, good for Carson Steele. I hope that his sister and her new husband, I wish them all the best of luck in their lives and in their marriage. But, yeah, man, fall weddings, especially when your brother plays football, maybe don't.
No.
What works for the NFL. I have to say no to a lot of weddings in the fall because of that.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. We ask our friends, just look, you have from February to July. You can get married then. And, after that, it gets a little bit tenuous. It depends how much we like you.
Probably cheaper during the winter, to be honest. So
probably is.
There's that
for
option.
Sure. So there you go. Anyway, Carson Steele, though, guy you should pick up off the waiver wire. Looks like he's going to get a lot of work in Kansas City. In the meantime, that is it. We are done. We appreciate you hanging out with the NFL Fantasy Football Show. You know the drill. Tell two friends to tell two friends. Rate, review, and remember, life is short. Smile while you still have teeth. Be safe, take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you tomorrow.